listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. This podcast is all about expanding the conversation around infidelity. I'm a relationship coach, and I specialize in helping people who are having affairs make decisions about how to move forward that are truly right for them. On this show, we feature tools and guidance from my coaching practice, as well as advice from other professionals whose work pertains to the sometimes complicated business of romantic relationships. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with John Corcoran of Rise25 once again. Hi, John.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Murphy. So this topic of this episode is going to be an interesting one for all the parents out there. So the topic here is how to talk with your kids about infidelity or a divorce or both things. And we're going to take it from the perspective of either side, whether you're the one engaging in the infidelity or you're the one whose spouse or partner has engaged in the infidelity. So we're going to launch into that and all the issues that are related to it. But first, before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Marie Murphy, PhD, Relationship Coaching, which provides shame-free, blame-free, non-judgmental relationship coaching. You can talk with Dr. Murphy about the things that seem too messy or weird or stigmatized to share with your best friend or your spouse or even your therapist, including but not limited to matters related to infidelity. To learn more about Dr. Murphy's relationship coaching practice, go to mariemurphyphd.com. All right, so this is such an important topic, for parents. Infidelity obviously doesn't just affect the romantic partners, doesn't just affect the spouses, but when their kids in a relationship, it's going to affect those kids as well. And so it's an important topic for us to cover here. Now, I should mention as kind of a disclaimer, I think this discussion a lot of it will have an impact on or be considering heteronormative nuclear families. But that's certainly not the only types of relationships that are out there. So just kind of as a disclaimer, do you want to talk a little bit about the types of clients that you work with and perhaps the types of, relationships and families that are out there and how that can affect this discussion around kids?
Yeah, there's so much we could say about this. So let me just say this as succinctly as I possibly can. Although many of the folks I work with are heterosexual people in heterosexual relationships with kids. So sort of the quote unquote traditional married situation, the traditional family, quote unquote. I certainly work with other folks with different familial and relationship configurations. And even though this nuclear family headed by a heterosexual couple is sort of the implicit standard here in this conversation. We're not trying to suggest that this is like the standard way of doing things or that this is what all families are like. So I just want to put that out there. But that said, if it does sound like that's kind of our frame of reference in this conversation, that's because it kind of is. But we have to have some sort of frame of reference to work with. So that's why we're doing it.
Okay. And so probably the first question that is top of mind for anyone listening to this is, how do you address it? So, you got kids and they're going to learn about it sooner or later. So how do you talk to kids about infidelity?
Yeah. Well, okay. So there are a number of different situations. Like sometimes people come to me who are having an active affair and their spouse doesn't know, and they're pretty sure they don't want their spouse to ever know, and they don't want their kids to ever know. So it is possible that it will never come up, that the individual will choose to resolve this on their own in their own way, and their intention will be to not have this be a family matter. So in that case, that's one scenario, unless, of course, the information comes up in some other weird way, which could happen. Unless, of course, other members of the family actually do know about it, but the person having the affair doesn't know that they know about it. But putting that aside, if this becomes a family matter and the spouse knows and the kids knows, the kids know, excuse me, it really depends on, first of all, the age of the kids. Second of all, what the couple is thinking in terms of the future of their relationship. And then if any decisions have been made already about the course of the relationship. So those are just kind of key topical points.
Yeah, yeah. So, I suppose one of the initial matters to discuss is the emotions that that you are experiencing. You meaning the parent who is going to have a discussion with the kids. And you could be really angry because you were cheated on, or you could be in the throes of much happier than you've ever been before. And either way, your kids are amazing at picking up on emotions.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you have a discussion with the kids? If maybe you don't want them to pick up on all those emotions, but knowing that kids are incredibly perceptive.
Yeah. So, okay, there's a couple things here. One is getting clear on the details that you're sharing with your kids. And that kind of goes back to the previous question, like, what do you share and when and why? These are open questions with no distinct prescriptive answers, in my opinion, despite what other people might say. I think a good guideline is to tell kids what they're ready to hear. And that may mean different things for very different ages. I was just talking with a parenting coach on the podcast recently, and she talks about how it's important to share age appropriate information. The other thing though is, like, let's say that you and your spouse have had a conversation about the infidelity, but you haven't told the kids yet. And maybe you're not going to, but the parents' emotions are running really high. And that's the kind of situation where the kids probably are quite aware that something is afoot. They know there's a disturbance in the force, and they may not know exactly what's going on. So this is a situation where there's so many things to navigate. There's, what do you tell and when, but there's also, how do you maintain responsibility for your own emotions without that meaning that you try to hide your emotions or edit your emotions out of you entirely or deny your emotions. What this may look like is, like, if you are, just angry out of your mind, this is not something that your kids are going to miss. And being able to acknowledge this in some way may be really important. And depending on the specifics of your situation, that could mean something like sitting the kids down and being like, look, I am going through a difficult situation right now, or your other parents and I are going through a difficult situation right now. And I am really upset, but I want you to know that I still care about you. This isn't about you. And answer whatever questions they may have, which, may put you in the position of having to disclose things that you weren't necessarily ready to disclose. But then do your work in getting your emotions under control. And that means a lot of different things. So in our episodes about emotions, we talk about how to experience an emotion and digest an emotion. And this is stuff that the average person doesn't have much practice doing all that well, quite frankly. But if you are crazy mad and you need to take a walk around the block, you go take that walk around the block. There's so much more to this topic.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. What about the other way of looking at it, the other side of the equation? So what if you have a spouse who is the angry one, who's acting out,
Yep.
blaming everything on you? How should you approach that with your children?
Yeah. So again, part of this has to do with, what have you told the kids about what's going on? How old are the kids? But that aside, I think the main task is to remember that your spouse's behavior is not something that you control. It's not something that you can manage out of the kids' lives, but you can control how you respond to it and how you help your kids navigate this situation. And that, with the right resources, that may mean saying, okay, kids, we're going on a little weekend trip away from the house. Or that might mean, letting your spouse know that if certain behaviors are going to continue, that, the lawyers are going to get involved. And hopefully that's not the situation that you're in. But it could be, and there's nothing wrong with saying, like, listen, this needs to be dealt with very clearly and decisively. Like, if the spouse is getting violent and throwing things, that's not a great way to express anger, and you can't fix that on your own, and you may need to do what you think is right to keep the family safe in the literal sense.
Right.
That said, it's also important for a parent to help the kids understand that we all go through difficult stuff sometimes. We all have challenging emotions that we need to practice, not practice, but practice dealing with. And that sometimes we don't do a great job of this. And it's okay to say, look, like, your other parent is going through some tough stuff right now. This may not look all that great. It may be difficult to be around. This is how you can protect yourself emotionally. This is how I'm going to help you. You let me know what concerns you have, and know that this isn't your fault.
Yeah. And then I think perhaps a related question is, so that question was kind of focused on how to deal with a spouse who's angry or acting out, blaming things on you. What about other family members that may be also acting out in some ways? It could be a parent. It could be a sibling of your spouse. It could be one of your other children that is acting out, maybe an older child or teenager or something that's acting out, and then that's affecting your younger children. How to handle that as well.
Yeah. So my take on that is that some of these things matter in different ways than others. So for instance, if your sibling-in-law or your parent-in-law is calling you every day and telling you what they think about your marital situation or your family situation or whatever, it's okay to set a boundary and just say, listen, I am not going to have these conversations anymore. Obviously, this is a very general piece of advice. The specifics may matter a lot, but that's the kind of situation where you can just draw a line and say, look, we're not going to do this. If it's your child that's living in your house, it may be a very different story. It may be not appropriate to say, look, you just can't act out in this way anymore, or I'm going to ignore you, or I'm going to cut off contact from you. There, it's much more important to figure out what they need. Not that it's your job to, quote unquote, diagnose them or tell them things that they can't tell themselves. But that's not what I meant to say either. What it is your job to do is to hold space for them and allow them to tell you whatever it is they need to share. And it may not necessarily be something that you want to hear. It may be something like, this sucks. Like, I hate all of you. Like, this is really uncomfortable for me. I think you guys have screwed up colossally, or something to that effect. And being able to give them the space to tell you that, it may be a lot harder than shutting them down and telling them that they're wrong, but your child's opinions and perspectives and feelings and needs are just as legitimate as yours.
You hear a lot of times parents who are going through a divorce or infidelity, they say things like, I just want to do the right thing for the kids. I want to do what's right for them.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for parents to navigate that or figure out what that is exactly?
Yeah. So let me start off by saying that when I hear that from parents who are worried about how their infidelity might impact their kids, they usually have an implicit understanding of what it means to do the right thing. And that is usually an understanding that they haven't really examined for themselves. Like, are these beliefs serving me? Are these beliefs helping me live the life that I want to live? Are these beliefs reflective of my values or the values that I would like to share with my children? Usually, people think that doing the right thing means doing what other people expect them to do. Not always, but often. So the first thing that I try to do with people is help them get really clear on what they think it means to do the right thing. And that's the first question that we can all ask ourselves in any situation.
And I imagine frequently they don't know because they haven't been through this situation before, or it's uncertain, at least initially.
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. But moreover, a situation like this usually, and this is especially true of affairs and changes in family configurations, but it's also true of many other situations in life. And what's going on is we have this conflict between things that we thought we valued or thought that we had committed ourselves to, and things that we also value that are in conflict or in contradiction to our older values or our pre-existing commitments. And that can create a lot of, internal turmoil for people. And what I like to emphasize to people is that it's okay to become something new and different. That's hard for us a lot of the time. It is possible to honor your values in new ways. So for instance, a lot of people think that, because family is important to them, they shouldn't get divorced or something along those lines. Sometimes it's a little more convoluted than that, but in practice, it often boils down to that kind of a thought. So then the conversation becomes, well, is it possible to still honor your value of family and to honor the people that are in your current family configuration without meaning that you have to do family in the same way forever and ever?
Mm. I also want to ask, and I realize we're kind of bouncing between like kind of deep emotional issues and how to work through them, and then also kind of the practical. But for many parents, the question is, what are things going to be like in the future? What are things going to be like with kids' graduations or school events or birthday parties or weekends, or what's going to happen far into the future, or walking down the aisle? All these ideas, questions flooding to people's minds. How do you help people through that? How do you help people to figure out the answers, if there are answers?
Yeah. So, and again, this is something that comes up around infidelity, but it comes up in conjunction with so many other life changes as well. We worry about things that are far off in the distant future, or even not that far off in the distant future. And we make those fears about the future an excuse for not taking action in the present. Here's the thing, like, who knows what will happen when your kid's graduation rolls around? And sometimes the kid is like 9 and the parent is worrying about like high school graduation and college graduation and their medical school graduation. And it's just like, that's a little ways off. Let's start with this week first. But these events loom large because we're afraid that that could be an uncomfortable event. And so part of this is recognizing what we have the power to do now and learning to take more responsibility for that. And also learning that whatever happens in the future, we're in charge of how we feel about it. So for instance, your divorce could be acrimonious. You might have a difficult relationship with your, the other parents of your children for a long time going forward. That is possible. It certainly happens. But that doesn't mean that you can't handle it in ways that make the situation a hell of a lot easier for you, even if your ex-spouse's behavior isn't what we might like it to be. And so these are things that we learn. There's no magic answer. It's not like, oh, it's going to be fine because boop. Like, there's no one sentence solution to this. It's about learning how to stay focused in the present and do what we can in the here and now. And then to learn how to digest our own emotions now and in the future so that we can handle uncomfortable events without them becoming like the boogeymen that prevent us from doing things that we can.
Okay, so let's flash forward a little bit further into the future. Mostly what we've been talking about here is the emotional issues that come up immediately in the aftermath or around the time of the infidelity. But if there is a drawn-out custody dispute or drawn-out divorce, shared custody, something like that, what are some strategies that you advise for parents in supporting their children on a longer term basis, where there is, a drawn out divorce and acrimonious relationship between the two former partners?
Yeah. So there, I'll try and address this in pieces, but if I don't get to everything that you asked about,
It's
just remind me.
This is a whole nother episode, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I was a little apprehensive about even asking it.
Well, the baseline thing that you always have control over is how you respond to the circumstances of your life. So let's just start with okay, there's been infidelity in a relationship. The couple has decided that they're not going to stay together and things are not going smoothly. A divorce is in progress and everybody's tensions are high and there's fights about everything, right? Let's just say that's the scenario for now. What you as an individual have the power to do is to take responsibility for how you perceive your partner's behavior. You can digest your emotions by yourself instead of blaming your partner for how you feel or blaming other circumstances for how you feel. And when you do that, you're able to respond to the situation in ways that ultimately serve your best interests and help you create the kind of life that you want to build going forward. What this means is that you may not be able to eliminate a lot of stuff from your kids' lives that you would prefer not to have in them, such as, arguments between you and your soon-to-be ex-spouse. It may mean that there's a lot of instability in the household or the perhaps separating households for a period of time. You don't have control over all of that, but you do have control over some of it. You can create routines and rituals for yourself and your kids. You can create new practices with them that demonstrate continuity of your love and continuity of some of the practical aspects of their day-to-day lives. You can create the structure for the future that they want and that you want. And depending on how old they are, this is a great time to start having maybe better and deeper conversations with them about what they want their lives to look like and how you want to create your shared lives together. And that can be a tremendous opportunity for everybody to grow in ways that actually augment your experience of family rather than detracting from it.
That's a great way of looking at it. Well, I'm sure this could go on for a longer discussion, but Dr. Murphy will wrap things up there. It was a good overview. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me at mariemurphyphd.com. I offer one-on-one intensive coaching tailored to your specific needs. And as of now, you can still schedule a free 30-minute Zoom consultation with me through my website.
May change in the future, but for now, if you get that opportunity, go do it. All right, Dr. Murphy, thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.